Today, I have Kristyna, or Coach K, as most call her, the owner and founder of Game Changers, a great friend of mine. I've gotten to know her and learn about how she works with teams. It has been so fun to connect and see her travel the country. And we'll get into this later in the episode of how she came to Nebraska and we got to meet in person. She hails from Long Island, New York as a native. She played softball and field hockey growing up, and then she decided to become a teacher and eventually a mental performance coach. She has her certification from John Gordon, and she has her master's in curriculum writing. So, all in all, I love her perspective as a mental performance coach and how she works with teams. So I thought it would be really fun to bring her, and she's on here live with welcome to the pod, Coach K.
Coach AB, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so the question I always start with is where are you at? What are you doing? I love where you're at right
Uh,
now. I know where you're at, but tell our listeners, where are you at? What are you up to?
so I'm currently in South Carolina, where I'm working with some college and high school teams here. I travel up and down, I would say the East Coast, but lately sometimes my travels are taking me out west, which I'm all for. So basically, I just travel state to state working with teams. So before South Carolina, I was up in Massachusetts, Long Island, and New Jersey. Then I come down south for about 3 weeks, and then I'll head back up north to service those north teams towards the beginning of March. And then literally, I'm right back here again at the end of March. So right now, it's just a lot of traveling and a lot of just state hopping, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
And we have to talk about this, and maybe we'll get into this later of how the heck did you end up in Nebraska? And I have to give you a little bit of crap because you didn't necessarily know until you looked at a map how far you had to travel. And I'm like, you're 3 hours from me.
It's
You have to come see me.
I'm gonna tell you, as an East Coast girl, I don't know anything about the out west. Like I don't know anything. Like even it's so funny. I was a like you said, I was an elementary physical education teacher, and every year my kids would sing the 50 Nifty United States song, right? Like my fourth graders would put on a play about it. And to this day, like there's so many states in that song where I'm like, where are they? Like, what are those states? So yeah, so I through a friend of a friend got connected to do a keynote for some schools in Kansas who they were putting on like a leadership workshop or a leadership seminar for the kids of their school districts. And I got out there and yeah, literally you DM'd me and we're like, do you know how close you are to me right now? And I was like, where are you from again? Like, I know you're out west, but I was like, where? And you're like, look on a map. And it was like, oh my God. And then honestly, that trip, I could have easily flown to Kansas and like just did like a one and done. But something in my head was like, Kristyna, you've never been out there. Like you don't even know what's out there. So the fact that like I drove through, I mean, I drove through Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Indiana, like places only seen on a map. And it was like so cool to be a part of like that lifestyle. Also, like I've never left the East Coast. Like it's always been like beaches and water and like out there, there's a whole lot of flat. That's just, I remember there was like
Yeah.
one road from Kansas to you. It was like one road for 300 miles. And I was like, are we serious? And
Yep.
I was
A
like,
lot of voice
okay.
memos.
Yep.
Hey, where are
Yep. It
you?
was
Are you doing okay? Are you having an existential crisis? What thoughts, what
so
downloads are you
fun though.
having?
So fun. So fun to get out that way. And like, honestly, like, I feel like that was such a big like universe moment bringing us together because yeah, like you said, like, we only talked via text, voice memos, Zooms. So like to be able to like hug you in real life, it was like one of those moments where it's like, oh my God, this is why I came out this way. Not for the leadership workshop. It was literally so that me and Amanda's paths could physically cross.
Physically cross. Yep. And you
Love it.
crashed on my couch in
I
true
did.
welcome to the family fashion. And my 5-year-old comes downstairs to wake you up. It's like, no boundaries. We're good.
I feel like
You're part of the
your husband
family.
was like who you know her how? Like who is this woman coming into our home? And I was just like, "Oh, hi from the
Hi,
internet."
welcome.
We met on the internet. That's what we did.
We're professionals, I promise. Well,
Too
let's get
funny.
into it. So
Yeah.
tell as we kind of go through this conversation, the reason that I wanted to bring you on is obviously because you and I do very similar things, but the way that you do it, we kind of started talking about it and we said, let's just hit record. Tell me some of the clients that you're working with. And I am so fascinated. I know you played softball and you work with softball teams, but on the other side, talk about some of the main teams that you're working with. Field hockey and lacrosse, right? Those are two separate
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
for
Two
the
separate things.
non-East Coasters.
Yes.
Tell
Okay.
us about
So
your client list.
So I am someone who works with all ages, all genders, and all sports. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I grew up the daughter of a football and a wrestling coach. So my whole life I was surrounded by, male athletes. And then I became, then I played my own sports. I played field hockey and softball. I went off to play softball in college. And then becoming a physical education teacher, I realized that I have influence and impact over both genders, not just like, yes, I want to empower young women and females for sure, but like I also, was responsible for shaping the minds of like 5 to 12-year-old boys, and confidence, things like confidence, your mental space, your emotional well-being, like that's not gender specific. And I feel like the conversation is so much more easily had with females than it is with males. And I will say that now, being in this light, recently I was just with a baseball team, men's lacrosse team, and a women's lacrosse team all on the same day. It was like back to back to back sessions at this one university. And the conversations I was having with the men were blowing my mind because it was
Mm,
like they wanted it. They want to talk about their mental space. They may be immature and they may be not want like not know how to have those conversations, but the fact that there's somebody giving them information and then they can go off and kind of do what they want to do with it. Something about my business too is that I work with athletes one-on-one. So whether it's a consult, like it's a one and done kind of thing, my calendar is always open for those athletes that want to take it a little bit more personal or a little bit more the next step. And it's always interesting to me to see how many athletes do jump on my calendar after I'm done with a in-person team session, because then I know that like the impact is like they're thinking about it long after I'm gone. And I think that that's probably the coolest part about what I get to do is that yes, I want them to excel in sport, and a lot of a lot of what we're doing is the here and now. So for them, the here and now is their sports, but it's also taking this into their life, right? Their relationships, their jobs, their careers. And I think we need to be more open to having like those kind of conversations. So yeah, so I love that I get to work with, listen, anytime I get to work with a softball team, I'm giddy on the inside because like I played that my entire life. Like that really was like my bread and butter. Field hockey, I love it because I coached it for so long. But when I get to, when like any team jumps on my calendar, any like men's basketball, like I have no idea about basketball. Sometimes like the fouls get to me. Lacrosse, I have no idea about lacrosse, and like I'm immersed in lacrosse. But at the end of the day, it's not lacrosse and basketball and baseball. It's your headspace and your heart space is what I like to call
mm,
it. So the game
that's
changer
so
is
good.
the game changer is understanding your head and understanding your heart and having a place to kind of like mesh those two together with what you're doing. So yeah, take it to the field, but also take it in the classroom, take it to your romantic relationships, take it to your platonic friendships, take it to your family. Something that I do preach to a lot of my athletes is like, you know, and we can get into this a little bit later or, a little bit more in depth, but like something that I always come back to is like, why do we do anything that we do in life, right? Like, so like, why am I a mental performance coach? Why do you have a podcast? It's always having that answer to the why. And I always encourage athletes to take that why beyond their sport. Why am I in a relationship with this person? Why am I studying this career? Like, why do I want this for my life? And it's like, sometimes it's too much for them. Sometimes it's like a too big of a question, but as long as you plant those seeds, like you don't know when that flower is going to sprout, but it'll sprout if you plant it and water it. So I feel like I'm out here just planting some seeds and hoping that, they pop up in due time.
I think your impact is incredible. I
Thank
want
you.
to go back because I think you said something really interesting. We make this assumption about our emotions and confidence. Let's just talk about this because it hasn't been talked about on the podcast yet. And I know that there's a lot of
Ooh,
parents who have obviously male and female um, sons and daughters. And I think
yeah.
one of the things that as females, we assume our male counterparts have it all figured out because they act confident, but on the inside.
Yeah.
There's this idea of masculinity and femininity. And we talk about this in realm of not as in gender, but as in effort levels and confidence, the feminine, the flow, the ease. And I think females get a bad rap for it's all about we have to look good, to feel
Yeah.
good, to play good. And our male counterparts get the bad rap that, well, they already feel good. They're already showing up as confident even before the results. They're quote unquote cocky. And so just kind of recognizing those differences. But if we look at it from a perspective of masculine and feminine, I would love your opinion on this. Both males and females have both the masculine and feminine sides to them, where sometimes you
Yes.
are going to be confident and sometimes you're not going to feel confident. I just posted about this on Instagram today at the time of recording of feelings, right? They're fleeting.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's riff.
So I think the biggest thing for our athletes is that, like, yes, there's lots of assumption, right? Like we're assuming all day long. And what is assuming? It's being judgmental. Like, let's just put like a black and white word on it, right? So I like to function from the place of be curious, not judgmental. So that comes from, me being curious. Like when I walk in with a team, I have 2 hours with them, right? So it's like, I can't judge. I can't be there in the moment and like say what I think they need me to say. It's I have to ask questions and I have to draw it out. So sometimes it's like a session, a team session is a lot more of me asking questions of like, okay, where are we at? Okay, what's happening? Versus me just standing in front of a room and preaching. And sometimes like the questions is where you get like the bread and butter, right? It's like that's where the bulk is. And sometimes coaches will make assumptions of what they think their team needs. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that we just need to talk about it. We just need to get it off our chest. And I feel like females, do a way better job of talking about their feelings and getting things off their chest. And then their male counterparts, it is a lot more reserved. I will say when I walk into a male team, 90% of the time, they just want the information. Just give me the information and I'll go and implement it. Where girls want to know, they want to have conversations, they want to talk, they want to like turn and talk to their buddy. And I think that whether or not it's a level of maturity, I'm not sure. I truly believe it's a societal thing, is that we've put this on them. And like for you who have you're raising little boys, right? Like I am such a big component where it's like, let's just teach them how to like separate, emotion versus like from like the facts. Right. So that's where that be curious, not judgmental comes in. So like when I have a thought or when I have an emotion or when I have a feeling, instead of judging it and then assuming the role that I have to play, right? So if I'm a male or a female and I feel sad, instead of judging myself, saying like, why am I feeling sad? I'm so embarrassed, or like I can't feel sad. Too many people are watching me. It's can I get curious in that moment of what's making me feel this way? What just happened? And then there's two different avenues that you could go down when it comes to athletics, right? Are you on the field and feeling this? Because in that moment, you can't be curious. You just have to have a way to work through it. So like I give a lot of like coping skills or a lot of like tips and tricks of how to like just move through that. But once you move through it, it's not gone. It stays in your subconscious mind, right? So it's like after the game, after practice, how are you reflecting and how are we actually moving through it? But if I'm feeling sad and I'm sitting at my kitchen table and I'm just able to journal or able to like sit down, that's where like the be curious really steps in, is like, let's be curious as to why this is coming up. And then I'm very much a solution minded person, right? I don't want you just thinking about like be cute. There comes a time where you have to stop the curiosity and be like, okay, I need to do something about this because this is affecting me. So it's like making that plan to move forwards. And like, I feel like that's what, game changers, the reason that game changers is called game changers is because I want athletes to find the thing that's going to change the game for them. So for some, it could be a mistake ritual. For some, it could be diving deeper into like your personal habits. For some, it could be mindset shifts. But for many athletes, it's learning the difference between, feeling the feeling and understanding the thought, but it's like moving between this be curious, not judgmental mindset because the world teaches us to judge and teaches us to like assume these roles. Being curious kind of goes against that. And it's often scary for a young athlete to adopt that mindset. But that mindset is where they're going to find growth, and they're going to find like the answers that they're probably seeking,
I think you're
versus me
absolutely,
just telling them to do something about it, right?
yeah, but I think you're absolutely right in that this didn't used to be the norm. This is a new
Right.
paradigm shift in parenting, in coaching, and I have young ones too that you mentioned, raising them. I think about, if we're coaching these athletes right now, our roles as mental performance coaches, we can't go back and change parenting. We can't go back and
Right.
change environments. But what we can do is we can provide tools and new perspectives, so that if your whole life, and I'm thinking of your male dominated rooms and teams, if Coach K is coming in and you're coming in and giving them tools and saying your emotions are valid, you don't have to squash them down. You don't even have
Right.
to eliminate them. You are allowed to feel frustrated. And I'll use a softball example, but if you strike out and you're frustrated,
Yes.
that's valid. If you missed a goal or you missed the play or you got benched, I would be more worried if you weren't frustrated.
Right.
And I think this is the first time that some of these athletes might be hearing it. Not that we want to unravel years and years of parenting, but
Right.
some of our parents were raised and choosing to raise their kids the way that they were raised, and things are changing. And
Yeah.
so I want to kind of speak to you listening. If you're hearing this going, oh, dang, like I'm going to have to reevaluate my parenting and I don't know if I'm doing the right things. The mere fact that you're listening and having this conversation with Coach K
Yes.
and I means that you care enough to try new things. And so, what would your advice be for maybe the parents and the coaches who are thinking, man, I don't know how to talk to my athlete about their emotions. I just try to pat it and make them happy as possible, or we avoid the tough conversations. What's your
Yeah.
advice?
So something that I have been suggesting a lot lately to the coaches that I work with, because like not only am I working with athletes, but I am working with, the adults in these athletes' lives. And I will tell you right now, 100% of the time, these conversations aren't being had because as adults, we are uncomfortable with these conversations because we didn't have them growing up. So it's identifying the fact that like I'm uncomfortable, and my biggest piece, I guess like there's like going to be two pieces of advice. My biggest piece of advice is to bring in a third party person that is like the buffer between what you're uncomfortable with and like how to start the conversation, because that's all we need sometimes is a conversation starter, right? We just need somebody to be in that, like a facilitator, a mediator, a mentor, whatever you want to call it. So when I get into a room and there's a coach and kids, it's how do I use as friendly language as possible so that I can encourage this coach to take the risk to start talking to the athlete. So it's all about creating common language. And so like that's why I come in and I have things like, I dissect the phrase controlling the controllables. I dissect the phrases, be curious, not judgmental. Like there's a big piece of like how do I go about doing that? And like that's where like the coping skills, and that's where the resources, like I create a lot of resources for the teams I work with, a lot of digital and physical things that they could use. But it's just creating that language that's friendly enough so that the athlete, no matter the age, understands what we're talking about. But then it also creates the connection to their coach, who often is an older generation, right? So like recently, I'm working with a team. They are a very young collegiate program. They had way more underclassmen than underclassmen. And then they have their coach is, I guess, what you would call a boomer, right? So you got boomer and Gen Z, and they were just hitting heads. Like there's a lot of miscommunication. And when I walked in, that's literally what I experienced. It was miscommunication. It was, we don't know how to communicate, because the kids of this generation communicate way differently than even, you and I do, right? So it's like you and I have had to learn how to communicate with this generation below us so that they listen to us. But like think about like two generations above, it's that is really hard. So like for example, boomers like to talk, Gen Z will do anything to avoid the conversation. They'll type and text. So it's like, how do we get these two worlds to talk? And that is common language, bring in that third party person. And then I will say for any parent out there that's starting to have like wanting to have these conversations, but not sure how, because let's face it, face-to-face conversations often become emotional. And it's like sometimes like a knockout, drag out fight, right? Like, and we don't want it to be. Something my mom did with me, and this is what I suggest to every parent that I work with, like if I work with your child, something my mom did with me is that she started a notebook that was just like me and her notebook. And she would stick it in the back seat of the car. And every game, you know, after every tournament, I would get into the car. And honestly, a little backstory real quick. My father was my coach my whole life. Love him. He's an amazing man, but we had to take separate cars to every single tournament. Like I made my mom and my dad drive separately. Like that was ridiculous looking back on it. I can't believe little Kristyna did that, but I did because I could not be in the car with my dad after a game because all it was coaching. It was like, we'd never turned it off. So my mom created this notebook for a space for us to talk, and nothing that was in the notebook ever came out of the notebook. We never talked about it in face to face, but it was a place for me to write down my frustrations, her to respond to me. And it created like this sense of, okay, she gets it. Right. So I encourage parents out there, if you're a physical notebook person, I would start, how can I implement like this notebook with my kid? If you're more of a digital family, I will say that I have people that use the notes app. If you are an iPhone person,
Love the notes
you can have a shared note, and it's this way, it's not a text, because you don't want your kid's phone going off during the school day, right? And like they might have thoughts during the school day. So it's like if they have the shared note, they just jot it down. Google Docs, a lot of schools are Google, Google schools nowadays. So the kids have their Google Classroom, their Google Docs opened up. And I will say that a lot of my college athletes choose to communicate with me via Google Doc. Like, so not a text, not a DM. It's like a running, I kind of like I call it like a running diary, right? Like, so like
Yeah.
they'll write, I'll respond. Sometimes I'll write, they'll respond. So it's just, again, I think it all comes back down to like that common language. I also think as adults, it's our job to start to get these athletes to understand the difference between doing something that's difficult and doing something that's detrimental, right? So a lot of these athletes think that like their bad things are, the minute I have a negative thought or the minute I have a negative emotion or a negative reaction, like my mental health is being like, it's taking a toll, right? Because that's all they know right now. Everything's like, about mental health. And I'm a big, preacher of mental health, but I think we've gotten far away from like what mindset really is. And it's identifying that things are difficult, but I could do it. Mental health is like, this is detrimental to me. This is physically, emotionally, like mentally bringing me down, and I need to stop or I need to seek out help. So as a parent, I'm a product of the mental tough generation, as are you, right? We were mentally tough. This generation below us is very much the mental health generation. They are very aware of their mental health. So I think it's our job to like identify and mesh the two, right? And I really think the difference is it's not mental health versus mental toughness. It's difficult versus detrimental, and
That's
giving them the
incredible the way
tools
that
to get
you
through that.
describe that.
Thank
Well, because I
you.
think sometimes the detrimental side, my job and yours, is that if there is an athlete that we're working with and we see those detrimental things, it's
Mm,
our responsibility to refer at that point and
yeah.
get them the help
Yes.
that they need on the mental health side. And I think sometimes if you're afraid to have that conversation as a parent, if you don't
Right.
have a mental performance coach in your daughter or son's corner, then who's pointing that out to them? Who's having those conversations? How do
Right.
we know that they don't need interventive measures, or that
Yeah.
they, how do they have that sounding board to know, is this detrimental or is it just difficult? I love the way that you phrase that. And you, I'm assuming, are educating them on, no, this actually isn't detrimental. This is just really
Yeah.
hard. Let's talk through it. Or, yeah, this really is something that I can help with. Let's get you connected with XYZ.
It's interesting because like, it comes down to the how do I know it's difficult versus detrimental, right? So it's having, like you said, like somebody who's a sounding board, right? Like sometimes I'm just listening and it's like, it might be not just like one session. It might be like a repeated thing I'm hearing session after session or conversation after conversation, where eventually I'm like, hey, listen, like this is going far past the scope of what I'm comfortable talking to you about, but like, here's the next steps, right? And honestly, it comes down to sometimes things are detrimental, right? Like sometimes this generation knows the difference, right? They know that like this is not great for me. I need to go. And I feel like, the transfer portal gets so much flack. And like I have mixed feelings about like the transfer portal, or like if you're younger, jumping from team, travel team to travel team. Like I've got my own thoughts on that stuff, but sometimes it is necessary to like remove yourself from an environment that you don't feel like you're growing in and go find an environment that's going to be better. It's not the grass, I'm not saying the grass is greener on the other side, or you're going to have different problems in this new space, but it's being aware that these kids know they have choices. Like they know they don't have to stay in a place that they are miserable in. And I feel like that is, honestly, I feel like that's triggering for a lot of our generation and above, because we
Yes.
weren't given options. We were told to suck
We
it
didn't have
up.
that choice. But that's
We didn't
Gen
have
Z.
it.
But that's
Yes.
Gen Z, is that they really are of the main thing that when I started doing research, a good, really amazing mentor of mine, that was her advice to me, was if you're going to continue to coach, you need to do your research on Gen Z. And the thing that shocked me, and keep in mind, this was as a head high school coach, the thing that shocked me the most is Gen Zs have no filter for they want to contribute to the decision making. They want to call the shots, down to
Yes.
something as simple as wristbands. We were deciding whether or not we were going to do those stupid,
It's
I hate
so
them, right? Like
funny.
signal
Yep.
wristbands of, instead of calling
Oh,
face signs and things
no.
like that, that,
Yes.
our generation, you would never even dream about, it then became a debate about, well, this is why I think we should have wristbands. And then I laugh so hard because my athletes to this day, I can hear them saying, well, Coach AB, we'll miss less signals. This is what's in it for you if you side with us on
Right.
this decision.
So
They want
funny. You're
that.
so
They want
right.
that
You're
debate.
so right. And so like something that I do, I put on a lot of coaches workshops, and I work with a lot of like coaching staffs, and like and a big topic is how to communicate with Gen Z, or like just understanding Gen Z. So like some of the things that like I kind of like roll off for some of these, coaches is like, hey, Gen Z is literally the only generation of their kind. They grew up only knowing technology. So when we start talking about, back in our day, they tune us out. They have such a great job. Like they can do such a good job of like filtering, because think about like they're on social media all day and they're just scrolling all day. They're filtering out the things that are of zero interest to them. So if we start to talk about things that are, something that they can't even like comprehend, they're like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. They also struggle with face-to-face skills due to their dependence on digital communication, right? So it's like a sport, where we need, all sports, you need to communicate in some way. If we're not stopping practice, and I that is such a scary word for some coaches, because they're like, we can't stop practice, but it's like, are you factoring in at least one day where you're in the classroom, or one day when you're off the field or off the court, and engaging them in like conversations? Like I just posted the other day, culture conversation starters, right? Like just
Yeah.
use these conversations, like use these to start some conversations. And coaches, sometimes it's scary to start conversations, right? Because you don't know where they're going to go. But like the fear, just like you can't go into a game being afraid to lose. Like nobody wins being afraid to lose, right? So it's like you have to be afraid to fail, and you have to be afraid to the conversations might get a little serious. But like that's where growth happens, right? That's where we start to
Mhm.
understand each other. And I feel like Gen Z just, they want to be a part of the conversation. They just don't know how, right? They want autonomy, but like they don't know how. So it's like
But
as
they're not
a
going to change their coach's practice plan. But I
100%,
will say, in the softball world,
100%.
we call them chalk talks. And so I love
Oh
the idea of
yeah.
having one day a week in the classroom. But if you
Hmm.
only have practice, well, I'll speak to the travel coaches that maybe you only have 1 to 2 practices during the week. Can
Right.
you set aside blank space for your
Yes.
team? with reference for you.
I love
You know,
it.
like 5 to 10 minutes
Yeah.
where it's okay.
Yes.
Can you do 5 to 10 minutes before practice? Can you do the 5 minutes where they're getting their water break? And maybe
Yeah.
your conversation starters would be a great opportunity for them to have one conversation piece and
Yeah.
just leave space. And you would be so
Yeah.
surprised at how much they want to talk.
Yeah. And if we provide them the opportunity for them to talk, then like when we're in practice, like we are also teaching them, okay, now it's time for this. So it's like the
Mm-hmm.
side chatter will go down, the side conversations, kids not paying attention because we've given it to them. And like, to be honest, like what happens when you all show up to practice? Most of the times kids are still on their phones, right? So they're not like back in the day, like we used to talk before practice, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
catch up with everybody. But now people are still on their phones, like they come to practice. So, you know, youth and club athletes and travel ball, like I do implement, okay, when is the phone in the bag time? Like, yes, for us, that's common knowledge, but for Gen Z, it's not common
Mm.
knowledge. Like we have to provide the parameters, just like listen, when COVID lifted when everything got lifted and we went back to normal life, us as adults were really easily able to go back to normal life. But our kids were like, what is normal life? This isn't normal life. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is all I
True.
know because their brains were just at such a young, they were at such a young age when all this happened. So I feel like if we want to set aside a time, or if like you want your practice to go a certain way, or you want your program to flow a certain way, it's putting in these parameters. It's almost as if like, back using the quote, you can only lead a horse to water. I believe Gen Z is, we are leading them to water, but we also have to provide them with the cup. We have to show them how to scoop it. We have to hold it out in front of them. They have to grab the cup and drink it. I 100% believe that. But we are no longer in a place where we can just lead a kid and they'll figure it out. I will tell you right now, I was just with the team and we were talking about the things that trigger us. And this was a male team, a men's team. I was talking about the things that trigger us, the things that make us upset, things that make us emotional. And they all unanimously were like, we hate when coach says to figure it out. And I was like, right,
Wow.
but we're not going to change coach. He's not changing. And unless one of you are brave enough to have the conversation with him about it, it's always going to happen. So it becomes coach saying, figure it out. It should be the positive trigger that we need to change what figure it out means to us. And honestly,
Powerful.
they don't know how to figure it out. So when someone says figure it out, they're like, I don't know how. So it's like, okay, when coach says figure it out, this is what we're going to do instead. And then, when I brought it to the coach's attention, of course, like coach had no idea. And I was like, listen, you don't have to change. This is on them. This is not on you. But it might be beneficial to engage in a conversation about like, okay, well, what can I say instead? And I will say that was like a huge turning point for like him in his career where he was like,
A game
wow,
changer.
he didn't realize, he had no
Yeah.
idea that it was like triggering them even more than they were already being triggered. So it's
But you
again, a
mentioned
simple
it earlier.
conversation.
It's the same thing as control the controllables and trust the process. If you don't know what the
Yep.
process is, how do you know to trust it? If you don't know what
Right.
it is, how can you figure it out? Oh,
Yep.
this is this is amazing. I'm loving this
Love it.
conversation. I do want to be mindful of your time because
Of course.
you're
Yeah.
amazing and you're working with a lot of teams, but this question, and it is time. I would love for you
Okay.
to answer this question. It is the question I ask of all of the podcast guests. You are a time
Excited.
traveler. It's the time
Okay.
traveler question. You could go back in time and give your past self one message. What are you telling
Oh.
her?
Uh, mm, college. I had a career-ending injury, and like your life will go on. Like you'll have purpose after this. Like I thought, like my whole identity was in that I was a softball pitcher, and when that injury came, man, there was a lot of just really sad stuff. I think that was really like the jumping off point for me for like taking on like such a leader type role. Like I was already a leader, I was already a captain, but like really stepping into like if I can't physically do something, like what am I gonna do? So I wish I could just go back in time and just like let her know. First of all, give her a hug because I feel like that girl also needed a hug. She was a little too brave. Um, Although she put on a little bit too much of a front, crying and not in front of people, but like, off on her own. But I would definitely tell her that it's okay. And like, this is gonna open up a door that you had no idea was even a door that could be opened.
Even today, look at the impact.
I know.
Look at the impact you get to have.
I know. It's like mind blowing to me sometimes that I get to do this.
Same. I'm glad we're doing it together. This
Me
has been
too.
awesome. Where can we follow you? I know you're super active in certain places,
Oh yeah.
mostly because we connected on Instagram, but where is
Yes.
the best place to follow your journey?
I would say, it's funny. I would say Instagram. I will be completely transparent. I am having such a love-hate relationship with social media right now, where I am overwhelmed. And somebody said this to me the other day, and it changed the game for me in my own life. Someone says you're frustrated with social media because you're consuming more than you're creating. And I was like, oh, that was it. I'm doing way too much scrolling. I'm following too many other like content creators. So like automatically I'm thinking like my stuff has less value or like my stuff isn't as great because I'm comparing. So I will say that I just did like a social media detox. I unfollowed a whole bunch of people. But Instagram at Game Changers with 3 underscores at the end of it is probably the best place to follow me right now. I do have visions of getting back on TikTok. I was really active on TikTok for a while, and then I took a break. And again, when you take a break, sometimes it's really hard to get back into it. And I feel like
But I love that you
I,
preach. You
yeah,
practice what you preach. You
yeah,
practice what you preach as a coach.
yeah.
So keep posting. I love it. Post
Thanks.
when
I
you can.
appreciate it.
Ironically, I'm in the same boat of, if we're busy making an impact in the world, we don't always
Yeah,
have time to post. And that's okay.
right.
When
Right.
the
Like
inspiration hits,
you are
post.
not less than if your stories go to 0. Like that you need like
Yeah.
to anyone out there listening, like it's okay. Let the story go to 0. The world will still turn. And when you decide to post again, people will be there to see it. But it's like it's not the be all end all. And that's like a little PSA
Amen.
for me too. I need to remind myself of that.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been an
You're
amazing
welcome.
interview. And then we'll end the recording and we'll keep chatting and keep staying in touch. But for now, that's
Perfect.
the podcast.
Sounds good. Thank you.